This week, could you go the way of John Lewis and sell your company to an employee ownership trust completely tax-free? Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6- and 7-figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancott, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. Well, that was fiery last week, wasn't it?
It was a little bit, wasn't it?
We've had to really dumb things down this week with employee ownership trusts. We just can't have... It was a 37-minute episode as well. Not one of the longest podcast episodes we've ever done. These are supposed to be short and snappy. But yeah, it was...
Do you know what also happened this week? I think maybe we underestimated how emotive the topic of people management and people leadership is, because obviously we got a bit fiery on the podcast about how you should manage or lead a team when it comes to KPIs and what motivates them and drives performance and things like that. And I have had a post on LinkedIn that, you know, by my standards is what you call blown up. I think we're up to like 75,000 impressions on it so far.
180 comments, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think it's over 200
it's the
now.
most divisive thing that's
wild.
ever come out of your mouth, and you did it by accident. It was only like you already said 3 sentences and you were just banging out content.
And it was about how I share the loaded cost of an employee with new starters so they understand the cost base of the business. Yeah, and it's gone wild. People were like talking to me like I murdered babies or something. Like some people I even had to block because they were just so rude and aggressive to me.
Just like,
I felt
running
really
a business,
flattered.
just sharing my thoughts. Here we go. Anyway, so, well, I hope...
So we're going to go into something a little bit lighter this week, aren't we?
I hope people enjoyed the episode last week, because actually I did enjoy it in the end once I calmed down and got off my ledge about it. But I think that's the whole point in podcasts, isn't it? It's supposed to be a debate. You know, you're not supposed to always agree. It's good to disagree in things and be able to just put the views out there. Just like the LinkedIn post, but like 50% of people strongly agree and 50% strongly disagree. There's no in between though.
No, I think it was about 25% were disagreeing. 75% were like, oh, okay, you know, I get that. Yeah. Some people were very strongly in favour of it. Most people were like, actually, that's quite an interesting perspective. And then 25% were like, you are the devil. How dare you employ anybody? You're like scum of the earth. Like I actually had somebody direct message me and say that I was scummy. Scum of the earth. Nobody would ever work for me. I was just like, okay, you're getting a bit carried away here. This is LinkedIn.
All right, Michael O'Leary, Mr. No PR is bad PR. Anyway, while this was all going on last week, we were in beautiful Norway, weren't we?
Oh, it was sensational.
You know, I am somebody that has travelled a lot because I've travelled a lot in previous jobs around the world. And I must say that I was blown away by Norway and the scenery. And we did a coastal trip up the coast of Norway from the bottom right to the top over 6 days. And it was... I mean, we could barely sleep. We could barely sleep because the sun never went down. That's not what I mean. I meant my eyes were like hurting, stinging from the scenery because I just couldn't shut them off.
Because it's so
I just wanted to look at everything. It was just, it is unbelievable. So I really recommend that.
There were a couple of things that we were a little bit shocked about with Norway, because I went to Norway probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And as with a lot of the Scandinavian countries, when you're there, they're known for being quite expensive. And I would say that we had a bit of a shock when we were there, because actually the pricing of like going out for dinner and drinks is not that dissimilar to the UK now, is it? Like we were in a bar and a cocktail was like £12.
Actually, you're right, because I think Norway's probably not moved anywhere near as much, and the UK has moved massively. And actually the gap has just got a little bit like closer. It was really, really odd. There's some things out there that are just really strange though, isn't there? Like you said, like a cocktail or something would be the equivalent of £10 to £12. But a pint of beer was also £10 to £12. Yeah. And that is really weird, because in the UK, it's half the price of a cocktail, like £5, £6, whatever else. So their prices are a bit all over the place, but...
Like a hotel room for the night, we were staying in like the equivalent of maybe like
a... city, 110,
yeah, like a Premier
quid.
in Travelodge type of thing in a city, and it was like 100 quid. We went for quite a high-end Japanese dinner, which I think was like £150, including a bottle of wine, which is pretty similar to the UK.
Price, like big
Oslo.
City price, like Oslo.
Yeah. So, I found that quite staggering, and I think it told us more about what's happened in the UK
than
what's happened in Norway. The fact that our prices have just gone up so much.
I know.
But nothing else seems to have got better. It's just everything's got more expensive.
Yep. Right. Well, let's find out today what this week's news story of the week is. So, Claire, you want to talk about women's football today, don't you?
I do, because today we're recording this, it's Sunday, and it is the day of the women's finals in the Euros. So
it
we're
is.
playing
So how
Spain.
topical that we're going to cover a little bit of news about women's football and men's football, actually.
Yeah, well, we were thinking
You're just
about
going to
this.
give us some stats on
you know, it's quite topical, a little bit fun. How can we link this back to business? And we struggled a little bit, but we've got some interesting stats for you. I mean, just to put a bit of context about this, because I think it's very easy for people to forget about the history of something like football in our country. But men's England football team was formed in 1870. The women's football team, they played their first game in 1972. So over 102 years later, it took for a women's football team to even be allowed, because up until 1971, women's football was not allowed in the UK. It wasn't illegal, but it wasn't sanctioned by the FA. So if you were a member of the FA, which pretty much every stadium, every club, every player is, then you weren't allowed to be involved with women's football. So it basically made it impossible. Other than to play on like your local village green, it became impossible for women to play football.
What year were women given the right to vote? I'm just trying to work this out against the football thing. I mean, don't guess. It's just, I just wonder if it's before or after the football thing.
It's way before that. Way before, yeah.
Yeah, after the war, isn't it?
Yeah. First World War. But yeah, so basically we've had women's football is like 100 years behind men's football. But actually what I found quite staggering is financially, I thought the gap would be bigger. So we were looking into how much money is brought to the economy every time there's like a big tournament or something like that. And they are suggesting that the women's Euros has brought £800 million into the UK economy. And that's in two areas. It's in hospitality and then retail. And pretty much they said the retail is people going to supermarkets and buying food and drink.
Yeah.
So 800 million has been brought to the economy by the Lionesses, but staggeringly it's 2.8 billion when the men's Euros is on.
Which, again, as you say, it's like, it's only 4 times as much. I don't think the gap's as big as I would have thought. Now, sweeping statement, but do you think that the majority of people that are watching women's football are women, or do you think it's the same sort of split that it is with men's football?
No, I think it's definitely more female orientated, but it's also more family orientated. And I think this was something quite interesting when we were researching this, is that when they look at the type of events that are put on for the Lionesses, they seem to be more family orientated and more family friendly, which I think is quite an interesting dynamic on it. But if you think about an event for the men's football, it typically tends to revolve around beer and being a pub or something like that.
And would you say that women are more retail and spend orientated than men?
Well, look, I don't buy into this stereotype myself personally, but we do know, you know. No,
I'm just wondering, like, obviously they've like you say, they've got to quite 800 million, a quarter of the spend in quite a short space of time. And I'm just wondering if the people that are watching and supporting it are more predominantly women, and therefore they're more predominantly retail driven. Is that why they're catching up quicker, because they're spenders?
Well, it's interesting because when I was looking at this, some people were sceptical. There was two sides to it. They were saying it's very family orientated and there's not that many family events and things like that at this time of year. The other side to it was that basically big organisations like people that would pay for sponsorship and media outlets and things like that, they're paying way over and above because they're jumping on the bandwagon of let's get behind the women, and they think it's like a culturally and socially acceptable thing to do, and that people will look favourable if they're on them, if they're doing it. A little bit like greenwashing, where people jump on the bandwagon of
a bit of corporate box ticking, where they're almost coming at it from a charity perspective. It's like charitable donations
because they think it will benefit their brand.
But also but equally, it's a good thing that they're doing it, because by giving it that platform and giving it that push, it's growing faster. So it is a good thing that they're doing.
The question is, will it continue or will it drop back? Because eventually that goodwill is going to stop. That goodwill of get behind the girls and all that kind of language, that would eventually, people get bored of it and it will tail off. And so will that sponsorship, will that income remain there or not?
Well, will it coincide with when times are tough, as we're going into difficult times, recessions and whatever else? When they pull back ad spend, will they pull it back from the places that are more unquantifiable? That usually is what happens. So possibly that's what they do.
We know as well that the gap, a lot of the men's football over the last 10 years or so has had an explosion of money coming from gambling companies and gambling sites and things like that. You know, I think it was pretty much every Premier League Premier League team has got a gambling brand on their shirts, and that's been changed. It's 2026 it's coming in, and all the clubs have said that they won't have that anymore. So it'd be interesting to see how much that gap starts to close.
Cigarettes and whatever else. I mean, it's quite surprising you can put gambling on still, but cool, great. Well, should we move on to the thrilling deep dive of this week?
Absolutely.
So this week, we're talking about selling your business to your staff, and this is the rise of employee ownership trusts. And we were going to run news story of the week on this, but just to give a bit of a heads up, a few weeks ago, this was in the news quite a bit, that the UK is seeing a bit of a mini explosion in this type of exit for business owners. We know that baby boomers are reaching points where they're selling their businesses or looking to exit their businesses. We know that it's actually quite hard to sell a business, and actually 9 out of 10 businesses never sell. So actually, what are the reasons that people are going down this route of an employee ownership trust, which is effectively, in a nutshell, selling the business to your staff? Why would business owners be favouring this at the moment? So we're going to unpack that, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of it.
Yeah.
So it's Employee Ownership Trust, which we'll now refer to as an EOT, just for clarity. And I'll probably start by saying that this is an area of tax law and of legality that is very, very specialised. So listen to the podcast. If you think it's something that might be right for you, go and find a specialist. There are specialists, not like business brokers, but like specialist consultants and coaches that will help you prepare your business for an EOT, and then help you hook you up with the right lawyers and the right accountants that are really specialised in this, because it's such a minefield. So yeah, if you get some ideas from the podcast, go and reach out and find some specialists. And I've got a couple that I can recommend also.
Excellent. Before we go any further, is the biggest EOT that most people would have heard of John Lewis?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether John Lewis... So an EOT is basically then where your business is owned by...
Like all of the different
Yeah, I'm not sure whether John Lewis ever sold it, or whether it was started... I think it was started like that in the first place.
Because they're a public company, aren't they?
Yeah.
No,
well, they're owned by the employees.
Yeah, like the co-op. And the co-op. They're the two that kind of...
Is the co-op owned by its employees, or is it owned by the customers?
Oh, yeah.
Like a little bit like a building society.
Yeah. Anyway, overarchingly, the same sort of theme is that, in the mainstream names.
Yeah, that's it.
The theme is the
exactly.
same.
So it's like John Lewis model, where it's owned by the employees. The employees benefit from the wages, and essentially they have a say in
or like nationwide,
from
where
the dividends.
They give people a bit of money. And
it's slightly
again,
different.
It's not quite the same, but it's like...
Don't get confused.
Yeah.
John Lewis was a great example. Okay. John Lewis is an EOT.
Quit while you're ahead, Simon. Quit while you're ahead.
John Lewis is an EOT. I'm just not sure whether it was ever not an EOT, and therefore it was sold, which is what we're talking about now, taking your normal limited company and becoming an EOT. I don't know if John Lewis went on that journey, but it definitely is a employee-owned company now.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. So what essentially is an EOT? Well, an EOT is a trust, so a separate entity that exists and owns your business. So if you want to exit your business, you need to sell your shares to somebody. Okay. And what you do in an EOT is you sell your shares to the trust, and the trust belongs to the employees of your business.
Okay.
Now, when we say employees, it's the employees at any point in time. So generally, when new starters come on board, they get an entitlement to that trust, and when they leave, they forgo their entitlement to the trust. So you're not giving the shares or selling the shares to individuals, you're selling it to the trust, and the trust always exists even though employees come and go.
How does the legality work of this trust with these fleeting thousands of employees in and out of it? Do they, is there a legality of each employee has to then be registered on this trust specifically, or is there something, just an overarching wording that says if you're an employee of that company, you're part of this trust? Yeah,
so you must be an employee of the company. So there'll be some specifications put around that. Normally it's like you're on a PAYE, you have an employment contract, etc., etc. So that would all be covered in the contract. So it's very clear who is and isn't entitled to it. Mm-hmm. Now, there's actually something quite specific in the EOT legislation, and it does say that it must be given to all employees on equal terms. Okay. Now, equal terms allows you to have a little bit of flexibility, because that equal terms might be that it's length of service. It might be hours worked, or it might be salary or remuneration package.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so you can define for you and your business what equal terms means, but it must be open to all employees.
Okay.
And the main reason that that's in there is because obviously if you've got quite a big family-owned company, you might say, oh, I want to give it to these 10 family members and these couple of senior managers, but not everybody else. You can't do that. It's everybody.
Okay, so that's what an EOT is. Why are these gaining popularity? Why would they? Why would you do it in the first place? Why would it be popular? And why is it getting more popular?
Yeah.
Kind of, let's wrap all that into one.
So by far, the biggest thing that makes EOTs popular is that they're capital gains tax free. So if you sell your shares to an EOT, then you don't pay capital gains tax, in a nutshell. So
we totally understand why in a world where
staggeringly popular,
everything's tax at the moment, can I have one, please?
You can have one, yeah.
Now, sell my businesses to me? That sounds great.
You only have to sell a controlling interest. So you only have to sell 51%.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So you can retain ownership, or what I have seen done with EOTs before is they will do like a management buyout. So some of the senior management would say buy half the business, and then the controlling interest 51% would be put into a trust and available to all employees. So there are lots of different ways you can do it, or you might get a private investor that wants to buy the rest of the shares, but that's quite unlikely if we're honest. So in the vast majority of situations, it's normally all of the shares that are sold, and when it's not, it's because it tends to be that the remainder is sold to a handful of specific senior managers in the business.
Got ya.
So the other benefit to doing a EOT is that annually the employees are allowed to benefit from £3,600 as a bonus, tax-free every year.
Oh, right. Great. So there's win-wins on both sides here.
Yeah, absolutely. Really so just, obviously when you give a bonus to employees at the moment, you pay employers national insurance at 15% and they're paying tax and national insurance as well. But you don't have to do that, which, every little helps in this day and age, doesn't it? So that would probably be worth about, like a £5,500 would be the cost to that bonus if you couldn't pay it tax-free under this rule. So it also saves the business money and therefore makes the business more profitable.
Interesting. I mean, you're not going to know the answer to this, but I want to ask the question why. Like, I want to ask the question why this exists, why it was set up, why it's allowed, why is it being given such big tax breaks? Obviously, it means from a regulatory perspective that it's something that the government really wants to happen. They really are backing it. They're not penalised. It's unlike them to leave big loopholes like this open. So, do you have a view on the why, or is it just something that's always been in law, or maybe they've not found it yet?
Oh no, they definitely know it exists. I'm not sure why it's the case. I'm not sure when it was introduced or anything like that, but it is the law. There was a legislation update in 2024, which gives us an indication that it's not likely to significantly change moving forward. They've tightened some of the legislation up, particularly around like how the company is valued and things like that. But the fact that there's been a review of it recently in 2024 kind of gives the impression that it's going to be around for quite a while as well, which is a good thing because with an EOT, it takes time to prepare.
I mean, how does it, if you sold 51% to the trust and you've got the 49%, you've not got controlling stake in the company anymore. But equally, let's say there's 500 employees, none of them are making controlling decisions about the company either. So who's making the controlling decision on behalf of the trust?
Well, so you have to appoint people to the trust that are responsible for managing the business. But it's a little bit like, as a director, you're legally responsible for making sure that the business remains solvent and complies with laws and regulations and things like that. It's a similar thing with the trust. But essentially, the trust is in control of the business and you have to appoint management that's appropriate to run the business. I'll just talk about one other pro of an EOT before we move on and look at some of the downsides to it. And another quite attractive part of an EOT is there's not really a sale process. If you think about at the moment, if you wanted to sell your business, you're going to have to go for a broker or go and, do some networking yourself and find some people that might be interested in buying it. That's a laborious process. You go through like lots and lots of questions, lots and lots of pointless conversations that don't lead anywhere. And, you can spend a lot of time and money doing that to ultimately not sell your business. Where I think if a lot of business owners said to their employees, I'm thinking of retiring, do you guys want to own the business? The chances of most of those employees not saying yes, it seems like quite an easy route to sell the business. And in terms of
some of them don't say yeah, how does it work? Like, how does it work if some of them don't want to?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know the legalities of that. I believe that there just needs to be a majority. Yes, that when you appoint people to the trust, the people that are appointed to the trust are in favour of it and therefore they're in control because you set the trust up to buy the business. So whoever's appointed to the trust just needs to approve it.
I don't want to own the business. I don't want the responsibility of that. I don't want anything to do with it.
And, for the majority of employees, if you look at John Lewis as a good example, when you go into like a Waitrose store, the people there, okay, yes, it drives a lot of sense of responsibility and sense of belonging, and that can drive the right behaviours in people. But ultimately, do they have a Scooby-Doo whether the business is solvent or where the strategy is or who the shareholder?
No, I imagine most of them don't even know they own the business. They don't understand what the ramifications of that is. They're just an employee. So it's different when it's so en masse. But if you're a small business with 20 people, like they're going to feel like responsible for the business.
Yes, but there is a group of people that are put together to manage the trust, similar to a senior leadership team in a business. And they're the people that carry that burden.
But what if the business isn't big enough to have a management team of scale to do that?
Well, you have to legally have that in a trust.
Oh, okay.
You have to legally.
So this
is
only really
appointed.
that applicable if your business is of a reasonable size. It doesn't really work in a small business.
Because interestingly, I lease my office from a manufacturing business in our town, and they had just gone through an EOT actually, and I think there's about 10 employees there. So you really can do this on any size. But yeah, back to the pros. I just summarise. So firstly, it's capital gains tax free for you selling your shares. You can give a tax-free bonus every year to employees of $3,600.
Yeah.
And then you don't really have to go through a sale process. You know who your buyers are. It's easy to approach them, and a lot of the time they'll agree. And therefore you don't have this drawn-out due diligence process and things like that you have to go through. It's quite a simple sale process from a legality perspective.
Got you.
Yeah? Now, what are the cons? So the downsides of an EOT, the first thing is that it can be quite difficult to get money.
Well, I didn't want to jump the one because I thought you might answer it, but my big question was how are the employees funding this?
Yeah. So this is the thing with an EOT is normally when you sell your business on the open market, you would get a lump sum payment and then you would typically get deferred consideration. That's generally how most deals are structured. But with an EOT, you're quite unlikely to get an upfront payment unless your business is carrying considerable amounts of cash.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the only way that if you've got surplus cash in your business that you're going to get an upfront payment. Otherwise, it's all deferred consideration. And the average time for an EOT to pay out is 3 to 5 years.
So they're funding it from the business?
Yes, so the business has to fund it. So that could either be
why would you
from...
do that? So if it's your business, you're going to get that funding anyway in the next 5 years. Why would you then
Exactly.
hand over half your business for the profits you would take anyway?
But you value your business as if the business had been sold on the open market. So if you were to carry on owning the business, you could draw down the excess profits as dividends. But when you sell, say, for example, over the next
you're getting the tax benefit, aren't you? You're getting
say over the next 5 years, you were going to make £1 million, let's just say. If you were to sell your business on the open market, you're going to get more than £1 million, aren't you? You're going to get £1 million plus the value of the assets, plus the goodwill, et cetera, et cetera. So you might end up with more like £2 or even £3 million, depending on what sort of type of business you've got.
But it's got to be funded out of the business. That could just take 3 times the amount of time.
Yes. Now, there are specialists...
So really, the only benefit is the tax break. You'll just be able to draw your own cash out your business at no tax, which is, don't get me wrong, it's worth 40% of the cash over the next 10 years if you draw it out in the next 10 years. But it's a really good benefit.
It is, but you've also...
Slow exit.
This is where the price that you get in an EOT tends to be lower, because if you look at this from like the employee's angle, like you've just said, they're taking on the liability of this business. But if you're saying, well, do you know what, actually, just pay me over the next 10 years, well, then the business doesn't have any other cash in it other than to pay you. So what benefit is there to the employees? They're not going to be being paid out dividends and things like that.
And what benefit is there to the business? Because you're starving of cash and it can't invest to grow anyway.
Exactly. So therefore, when you look at the price that an EOT normally sells at is lower than generally your business sells on the open market.
Yeah.
So it's a real big consideration. And then how it's funded also really becomes quite tricky. Anything over 5 years, and I think the employees are going to be like, why on earth are we going to do this? And like you've just said, you're starving your business long-term of cash flow. So is it really within the business's best interests?
Do you think the business owners that do this fall into more often the bucket of people that just have a great close relationship with their team and their staff, and they want to really look after them, and actually like it's half sale of business, half goodwill, charitable, the right thing to do. They fall into that category. I want to do the right thing for business, not get the most money out of it.
That's definitely an element of it. Not always. There also are some that sit in the camp of they literally can't sell their business, so they think I've got no other way. Which is true. That's probably the main reason, isn't it? They're just like, we can't sell it on the open market anyway because it's key man driven and all the rest of it. So we'll just sell it to the staff. Yeah, exactly.
Just get a tax break. It's like the next best thing.
So you can get lending, just like you can get lending to buy a business. And I'm not talking about asset finance and things like that here. I'm talking about specific acquisition finance. You can get specific acquisition finance for EOTs as well. So you do need to go to a specialist lender, but it is available. And essentially the trust is taking on the loan on behalf of the employees. So there's no liability paid. Normally, there's no liability transferred to the employees with regards to like personal guarantees or anything like that. It's not that type of thing. Okay. Now, the biggest issue that I see with people talking about EOTs, because a lot of people would listen to podcasts and read things and have heard it's capital gains tax free, so it seems very, very tempting. And you look at their business and you're like, which one of your employees are you proposing as the managing director? Like, you literally have nobody in your business that is capable of running a business. And I think that's the biggest thing here, is that the quality of the team that's left is everything. And it's a very, very tricky situation to manage from an employee perspective.
But isn't the point that you said that none of the employees become the managing director, they just recruit the right person to sit in that job?
They would, but I think a lot of your employees would probably be quite shocked at the salary that you'd have to pay to a decent managing director on the open market to recruit them. And I think that most businesses would have somebody that thinks that they can do that managing director job.
I agree. I just wanted to see what you said.
So
it sounds like it'd be a bit of a dogfight, to be honest, because there'd be like every man and his dog thinking they could be the MD and probably can't and shouldn't be. And if they went to the open market, realised that they've just ate half their profits in the MD. The MD salary. The guy that was doing it for free before and underpaying himself and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Messy.
And you're also going to have some employees that, get a little bit carried away, let's say, get a little bit excited about the fact that they now own a business and they come to the table with loads of ideas and they just think they can sort of run with everything and they're now in charge and it's their business.
And the business is just going haywire and just mental.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
I can imagine.
that is the risk, is that I think the businesses that have a well-structured management team already and are businesses that can run without an MD, actually, they're the businesses that would be best suited to being an EOT.
Yeah, we've seen this. The best businesses that have done this basically already had an exec. The MD just remained the MD, the finance director remained the finance director, and all the rest of it. And they just took shares in the business, didn't they?
But the ironic thing with that is that if they went to the open market, the business owner would probably achieve a lot more from an exit than through an EOT.
Yeah.
So therefore, the best businesses that are best suited for an EOT probably go to the open market.
Ironically, yes.
So,
got it. Yeah.
So who is an EOT right for? Well, the reason that I think it's right, if you're thinking about exiting your business, even in 10 years' time, even if you're thinking, I'm not there yet, I'm 10 years away from retiring, really, an EOT is 3 to 5 years in planning in terms of putting the right team in place.
Sounds like just leave it to John and Lewis, yeah. Thanks for that, Claire. I think we've covered that quite well. Thanks for bringing me up to speed on what that means. And I'm going to move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra.
Just before we move on, though, what do you think about EOTs? Do you think they're good? Do you think
no? I think I'd sell my business on the open market. I think they're exactly what you said, which I think they're just a bit of a. I just think that it's one of those where it's like when I've tried everything else. It feels like one of them. It feels like when I've tried the routes to get the most money for my business and I come to the realisation that my business isn't structured right and the open market doesn't value it what I thought I'd value it, can I cobble something together that means that we can keep the business going, I can get a bit of money out of it in the most tax efficient way? Feels like that.
Yeah. I have to agree with you. Don't get me wrong, there are some very, very niche circumstances. And I
don't mean that in a negative way, because I also mean like this.
There are some very, very niche circumstances where the stars align and this is the perfect exit for some business owners, but they are very, very few and far between. This is not like a run-of-the-mill, everybody consider an EOT, I think.
Plus, I'm sure there's lots of business owners that just think, I don't want to go through also just the whole hassle of the open market due diligence, whatever else, and like, people rifling through my numbers and my books and whatever else, when I can just have a nice conversation with my staff, write some contracts together and just walk away nice and quietly, which is, I think, kind of how the people that you're neighbours with kind of went through it.
But the risk is is that if all of the money is in deferred consideration, so you're not going to be paid for 5 years. You can't just walk away, because if that team's not capable, you're going to get nothing.
Yeah,
the business will go under, and you'll end up with nothing.
Absolutely true. But also, let's be really honest, because here's another good example in the one that you're really close to. Actually, the guy's sold his business, but he's coming to the office 2 days a week and sitting with them, and he's still like he's still dabbling in the business, even though he doesn't own it anymore. Do you know what I mean? So I think like there's a little bit of the psychology of like, I don't really want to let go, and this is my best way of like letting go, but they'll still let me in a little bit to get involved and keep me interested. Like if I want to just like come and have a chat with them while I'm retired and all that.
The other thing I'll probably add is if you've got a business that owns property, so you own your office or your warehouse, whatever it is that you operate out of, you don't have to sell that to the trust. That can remain with that. You can remain a shareholder of the company, keep your ownership in the.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so that often if you own property, that's what inflates your sale price of a business. But probably I'd say keep hold of that and rent that to the new tenants, which would be the EOT trust.
Okay, good. Can we move on now?
Yeah, we can move on now to the PCG Extra. Simon's pointing at me like I've got something to say here, but...
Because you said you wanted to say something before I said about...
Oh, yeah. Well, we do...
You were like, I don't use it.
Because you've written down Google Lens, and my immediate reaction to this was, that's that bloody annoying thing that I keep accidentally opening and I can't work out how to close quick enough. Which
is interesting. You're like, why have you put that on there? Because I don't use it. It's rubbish. It says that and the other. I put it on there because we've just come back from Norway, as we said we have, and all we used all week was Google Lens to go, what's that sculpture in the sea there? And we held our phone up to it and it told us... us what it was.
I was using ChatGPT.
Oh, I was using Google Lens. And you were like, what's that roll there? And I was like, just put Google Lens up against it and it translates it, cinnamon bun. And we were like, that's great.
No, I was using Google Translate for that.
It's the same thing, but you use the Google Lens thing and it looks it through the... So when you go in Google, if you click the Google Lens, that your camera comes up and then you hold it up to your thing and it translates the stuff in front of you.
No, ChatGPT or Google Translate.
Google Lens does the job. And I've never used Google Lens before. This is why I put it on here, because I was like, this is really good. Basically, it's really good when you're travelling for like, if you see landmarks or sculptures, and we had this, we're like, what's that? What's that? And if you just hold the Google Lens, the camera comes on your phone, you hold it up to the thing, and it'll basically search the internet for that sculpture and it'll tell you what it is.
Do you know how else I used it? Very practical is we had coffee pods that were different colours. Didn't know what brand they were and what they all were. So I took a picture of that and told it to tell me what each of the different colours were.
Because I was like, you could give me decaf here. And you just took a picture of these three what they call Nespresso type things. Don't know what brand they were. Said like, what are these? And like literally count for your phone. This one's this one's this. You know, take a look at it. Google Lens, it's quite good because obviously, you know, it's basically searching, but the only thing you've got in front of you is the image. You don't know what it is, and it's clever. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us for another podcast this week. As always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your current accountant, you'd like to work with Claire and the team at Profit Cash Growth, you can nip over to the website profitcashgrowth.com. On there, you can book a free health check, you can book a discovery call, and you can listen back to all the podcasts. They're all evergreen. And as always, if you don't mind sharing this, if you know a business owner who's trying to exit his business and he's looking at all the options and he hasn't talked to you about an EOT, just click the little share button, stick it in a text message and say, hi, you need to listen to this one just to keep your juices flowing and make sure you exit with a good value. And we'll see you again next week.